Imagine waking up before sunrise. No coffee, no warm-up playlist. Just cold air, iron discipline, and the knowledge that your life and the lives of everyone around you depended on how hard you trained today. This was the daily reality for warriors across the ancient world. From the sun-baked training grounds of Sparta to the misty dojos of feudal Japan, from the war camps of Rome to the warrior societies of the Aztec Empire. The training that forged ancient soldiers was brutal, methodical, and surprisingly sophisticated. Today we're going back thousands of years to answer one question. How did ancient warriors actually train for battle? Let's start with arguably the most famous warrior culture in history. Sparta. The Spartan training system was called the Agoge, and it began not at age 18 or 16, but at age 7. At 7 years old, Spartan boys were taken from their families and placed into state-run military barracks. There, they were deliberately underfed, not out of cruelty, but to teach them to endure hunger and to sharpen their instincts for survival. They were encouraged to steal food, and if they got caught, they were punished, not for stealing, but for being caught. They slept on reeds they cut themselves from riverbanks. They went barefoot in all seasons to toughen their feet. They were regularly beaten and expected to take it without flinching. But it wasn't just about pain tolerance. Spartan training was holistic. Boys trained in wrestling, javelin throwing, running long distances, and close combat fighting with short swords and shields. They memorized poetry and learned to communicate in the famously terse, laconic style, because a warrior who panics and rambles is a warrior who gets killed. By the time a Spartan soldier graduated the Agoge at age 18, he had been forged, quite literally, into a human weapon. Now let's cross the Mediterranean to Rome, the civilization that built the most successful military machine the ancient world had ever seen. Roman legionaries didn't just fight, they trained with the obsession of professional athletes. A key piece of Roman training? The palace, a wooden stake driven into the ground. Every Roman soldier was required to practice sword strikes and shield movements against this post for hours every day. And here's the genius part. The training weapons, the wooden swords and shields, were made twice as heavy as real combat equipment. The idea was simple. If you can move smoothly and powerfully with a heavier weapon, the real one will feel effortless in your hands. Roman soldiers also marched, a lot. A standard legionary was expected to cover 20 Roman miles in 5 hours in full armor, carrying equipment that weighed around 40 to 60 pounds. They did this 3 times a month as a mandatory exercise. This wasn't just fitness, it was logistics. Rome's greatest military advantage was its ability to move armies faster than anyone expected. They also trained in formation, the famous testudo, or tortoise formation, where soldiers locked shields overhead and on the sides to create a nearly impenetrable armored shell. This kind of coordinated movement required hours and hours of drilling, because in battle, if one soldier breaks, the whole formation can collapse. Rome understood something very modern. Individual strength matters, but unit cohesion wins wars. Halfway around the world, in feudal Japan, the samurai were developing one of the most refined and philosophically rich warrior traditions ever conceived. Samurai training wasn't just physical, it was spiritual. The warrior was expected to master the sword, yes, but also calligraphy, poetry, and Zen meditation. The concept of Bushido, the way of the warrior, demanded that a samurai be as composed, writing a haiku as he was drawing a blade. On the physical side, samurai trained from childhood in kenjutsu, the art of sword fighting. They practiced thousands of repetitions of the same strike, the same parry, the same footwork pattern. Repetition until the movement was no longer a thought, but a reflex. They also trained on horseback, practiced archery, kyujutsu, and studied jujutsu, unarmed grappling techniques for when the sword wasn't an option. One of the most striking aspects of samurai training was the emphasis on mental readiness for death. Warriors were taught to meditate on their own mortality, not to become fearless, exactly, but to become free from the fear of death. A warrior who is afraid to die hesitates. A warrior who has accepted death moves without hesitation. On the other side of the planet, in the highlands of central Mexico, the Aztec Empire was producing warriors of its own. The Aztecs had two elite warrior classes, the Jaguar warriors and the Eagle warriors. To join their ranks was the highest honor a commoner could achieve. Aztec boys entered military schools called Telpochcali at around age 15, where they learned the fundamentals of combat, primarily using the macuahuitl, a fearsome wooden club edged with obsidian blades sharp enough to decapitate a horse. But here's what made Aztec warrior training unique. The goal wasn't to kill the enemy. It was to capture them. Aztec warriors were specifically trained to subdue opponents alive for ritual sacrifice. This required incredible skill and control, far harder than simply striking to kill. A warrior's status was measured entirely by the number of captives he took. Take enough captives, survive enough battles, and you could rise from peasant to the elite warrior class, regardless of your birth. What's remarkable is that despite being separated by oceans, centuries, and entirely different cultures, these warrior traditions share a common thread: discipline, repetition, and mental resilience. The ancient world understood something that modern sports science has only recently caught up to: that the body and mind must be trained together, that discomfort is the price of readiness, and that warriors are not born, they are made. The next time you struggle through something hard, remember, somewhere in history, a 7-year-old Spartan boy sleeping on reeds in the cold had it worse, and he kept going, and so can you. History is full of untold stories like this. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one.